There is a strategic process underway. Logistics, Secretary Mattis is very focused on the strategic picture, but also being able to, bridge that last 2,500 yards, as he put it, for the troop on the ground. But also from a broader perspective, there is an insatiable demand for global logistics. What are some of the novel and innovative things you guys are doing to push not only logistics to the major hubs, but then get it right down the pipe, right down to that frontline level where I think he wants to see a little bit more emphasis?
Well, we have the supply chain operations wing and the supply chain management wing, which the Air Force stood up, and they provide our global coverage. One of the key aspects that we have across the logistics enterprise is something we call logistics command and control. We know that we're going to only have a limited number of resources, and we have to have better visibility and ability to control those, because we know that we are going to have to cover the globe. For many, many years, Vago, we got into the mode of what I call student body left. We're in operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, so they need it, they get the top priority. But now, if you look at the global environment we're in today, with General O'Shaughnessy looking at what's going on over in the Pacific, with General Walters looking about what's going on in Europe, we have to have a command and control process that allows us to be able to move these things, to know where they are, so that we can make the decision to move them. And then the other thing that we're exploring, probably for the longer term, is this concept that I talked about during my Breaking Barriers speech, which is using additive manufacturing to create a global manufacturing network. So picture this. I no longer store parts for airplanes. I have materials and I have additive manufacturing machines, and if you're an airman at Osan Air Force Base and you need to replace a part, you go over to the digital library, you load that into your additive manufacturing machine, and the part's there for you. And I don't have to ship anything, because I have a limited amount of materials that I have to ship, obviously, to make it. And I have a digital design that enables me to make that part where I need it and not have to the expense and the time it takes to get the part there.
You kind of beat me to the question I was going to ask you, actually, which is, when you look at a just-in-time universe, folks don't have vast inventories of parts. And I was going to say that in a crisis situation, as additive manufacturing steps up, but is there almost an industrial-based challenge there where, God forbid, there is a high-intensity conflict? World War II, everywhere else, a vast inventory, spare warehouses of spare parts, warehouses of stuff that was moved forward. Is there resiliency in this global industrial base that you're drawing from to be able to support combat operations in a very, very real manner, given that some of this, some projections are very fast, very furious, some of them are much longer and protracted. Talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges of feeding this vast beast that's consuming parts and everything at a voracious rate.
Well, the health of the industrial base, I think is one of the things that the President has issued an executive order to look at, and that's just the U.S. industrial base. And we really do need to look at this from an international perspective, especially when that the fifth priority of our Chief and Secretary is to build alliances. And we are never going to be in an operation where it's only going to be the United States. So the issue of how do we make sure that we have our understanding and visibility of what's in that global base. And you look at a program like the F-35, which literally is building a global infrastructure of depots and manufacturing capability. The challenge with that is to manage the capacity of that with the need. And that is going to be a continual thing that we're going to have to work at and continue to explore what the opportunities are.
Two questions, because I know I'm about to get the hook. I'm good with that. First thing on F-35, you mentioned, and let me ask you, from a sustainability, supportability standpoint, and we're looking even more broadly at the program, are you happy with where it is? And are some of these key logistics and supportability lessons making it into that program?
Well, Vargo, we have some work to do when we end on sustainment on the F-35. The program office has done an amazing and remarkable job at getting the cost of that airplane down. But now that, right now, we have more F-35s in the Air Force inventory than we have F-22s. So from my perspective, this is no longer what's the unit cost of the F-35. I am focused on what does it cost to sustain this thing, and how do I drive those costs down, because I want this to be an affordable weapon system to operate. So in fact, next month I'm holding a 4-star summit to look at F-35 sustainment, working with the JPO, the Joint Program Office, as well as with the Navy, and looking then within the Air Force, what do we need to do to manage this fleet? Because it's a big fleet already by our standards, and it's a shift in how we will, what our manufacturers will be working on, because right now the focus has been on manufacturing the parts and the materials to feed the production line. Well, now I need parts for those that are already out there. So I think, I don't want to say we're behind the power curve, but we're right on the power curve. You know, we have to make sure that we shift our attention over to the sustainment side versus the full court press at looking at production. And Lockheed recognizes that, the Joint Program Office recognizes that, but also the Air Force does, as we look at this fleet continuing to grow.
And that's right, and you guys do have some rework on those earlier airplanes to get them up to the standard that the future production lots are going to be.
Well, exactly, and each one of the LRIP lots is a little bit different.
Making that challenge easier for you every day. Let me ask you one last question. Under law, the role of the acquisition executive in the DoD is going to be split between the acquisition side and then the logistics and the sustainment side. Talk to us a little bit about, as somebody who has that soup to nuts capability under one roof, how is that going to change the relationship that you're going to have on an OSD basis, if at all? I mean, there were a lot of folks who are kind of interested in how that's going to play out.
You know, it's really too soon to tell. There certainly was some benefit of having, you know, one person, but frankly, a lot of what we did, we worked with the two groups separately, because you know the challenges associated with sustaining the older weapon systems are very uniquely different than a major acquisition. And so I think initially we're not going to see a lot of difference because many of the same faces are the ones that we're working with. Right. But I think as you know, Ms. Lord, you know, refines the approach, we'll see more, and we'll work hand in hand with them to make sure that you know we don't lose anything in the process.
Let me ask you just one last question, because I asked Dewey Everhart this question about in the event of, say, a worst case scenario, let's say a Korean crisis, and all eyes and focus is on that. In the event that you've got to push that accelerator, that throttle through to get material over there, are you comfortable that the whole system is going to surge and be able to effectively support even a major conflict like that?
If Dewey can get it there, we will push on getting it. I mean, it is a challenge, as you know, to move that much material in a period of time. But you know, we exercise, we plan, and the Air Force will be there.
Ma'am, thank you so very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.